Okay, so I'm a stay-at-home dad today, which is why I'm not filming this in the car on my way to work like usual. Um, the baby's at his granny's, so okay, so how to wake up. You wake up by doing nothing. There's nothing to do to wake up. In fact, it's not really true. It's not so much like doing nothing, it's like undoing the doing of something. And how to do that? How do you do that? I don't know. I actually don't know. So I want to move these videos more towards a practical approach, because it's easy to get caught up in the theoretical mind stuff around awakening, and a lot of the times that just contributes towards forming interpretations of experience that become the identity of the person, which then has to be deconstructed at some point. So it seems like the initial realization is more relevant than ever after having in deeper stages of realization. It's like the gap there is joined, so you get the initial realization. If I'm going to make some weird obscure graphical interpretation of awakening, the initial realization is I am, what am I? What am I? So the question is, are you, who are you? Are you the person? Do you identify with this person? Is that the only way in which you interact with the world? Sorry, I need to crack my back here. Through the person, is that your identity? I am me. I am this human individual. I am this, that, and all these labels that construct your identity. That identity, and the highs and the lows of the person. Excuse me. Now that person's story as it goes around relating to the world. The initial shift is like begins like a noticing of something, let's say, behind the person, something that is experiencing the person, that is experiencing life through the person. Say for example a soul. So for example, so we all know, I think it's really easy to observe that there is something watching, aware, most of the time initially in the background, noticing that presence, noticing that awareness, that consciousness, that intelligence that is neutral, is constant, is unaffected by the ups and downs of the person, is always there, always watching, always observing, always experiencing, but untouched by the play of form. So it begins by noticing that, and the mental concept that comes from this is a construction by the person that's based on the the observation of, let's say, the perceiving of this infinite presence, this infinite awareness that goes beyond the person. It transcends life and death, it transcends experience, it transcends time, space, but simultaneously is everything. And the tendency of the person to kind of anthropomorphize this into another self, like a persisting soul of this person, this entity that continues after death or after this form dissolves. So it begins by noticing that, and then the mental concept forms, like I know that my true self, let's put it in terms of true self, my true self is beyond this. My true self is part of me, part of everyone else. The true self is infinite, untouched by death, untouched by time, untouched by emotional turbulence, the highs and the lows, but also is that at the same time. It's experiencing this world of form through the person, and that is the true self. Like I said, there's a lot of there seems to be a lot of this joining the gaps in this awakening process. So this is noticed I'm going to categorise it here into a couple of ways. So this is noticed more easily, I think, when there is no thought, no active thought, no mental dialogue of interpretation of experience in the mind, gaps between thoughts. So for example, a good one to do is watching the breath. So take a big breath in. Just be acutely aware of all the sensations there. One breath, and even part of that breath there was stillness, there was no thinking, and you notice that there is an awareness there behind that. Do a few breaths and then the mind kicks in. With these automatic thoughts that you don't seemingly have any conscious control over, it just comes in. It's well practiced, it comes in. The mind made self. And then the other way is that when these thoughts come in, you let them go. You don't pick them up and identify with them. Don't run with the narrative. You let them go almost by taking a step back, by observing the process of thoughts without getting invested and involved in it, without identifying. So you're watching. It's almost like you're bringing your awareness back and you're watching, you're aware of the thoughts, and then the thoughts can run simultaneously to presence. A bit more difficult. And what we notice is that when we watch the thoughts have a tendency to dissipate, and then we start to see the patterns coming back, repetitive thoughts, repetitive themes, and it's becoming aware of this. The awareness, the presence we talked about, is becoming aware of the thoughts, so that we're not immersed in this. It kind of objectifies the person and the mind of the person, so it can be viewed as an object by the subject being infinite, what we just described a minute ago. And through practicing this over time, there starts to be these experiences. So the experiences are you're experiencing life as being lived through you by this infinite awareness, and that's what's happening in the moment. It's not a theory, it's not a thought, it's what's happening right here, right now. this. So you've shifted your perspective. You've, in a sense, whatever way is helpful to conceptualize that, you've shifted the perspective out of the ego, out of the person, into something bigger that manifests itself through the person in this world. So gradually those gaps start to close up. The gaps of being lost in thought, being lost in identification start to close up. And eventually there is a shift, where it becomes undeniable from the point of view of the self will deny, because it wants to perpetuate its own narrative. It becomes undeniable that you are something bigger than the person. Then there's a shift where it becomes your baseline state of operating in this world. And that is, you lifted yourself out of the problems with the person. It comes with a great sense of ease, freedom, simplicity. The problems of this person continue, but because of that perspective shift has happened, these problems start to resolve themselves. This behaviour starts to resolve itself, because it's not all these little, because we're looking to get rid of the dysfunction, aren't we? We're looking to get rid of the suffering, but all these problems that are created by the dysfunctional patterns of the ego start to come to bits. They're lost in the vastness of presence. They're lost in the vastness of this infinite conscious awareness. They're lost in the moment, not perpetuated, not strengthened. Those circuits aren't being strengthened all the time. And then the person, the self, starts to change. A lot of things can change. So that's the first shift. And then when you're now in this state of this shift in identity, this state of awareness, then it starts to go deeper. And then once that hurdle's passed, then it's just what happens though is the self, on whatever subconscious layer or deeper layer of thought, the self starts to reconstruct. Or maybe these structures are there anyway, I'm not sure, but it starts to reconstruct, trying to find its footing again. And then that's when the work becomes important. But in the deeper levels of realization, it's almost like I said, going back to that initial realization and closing the gap, and it all seamlessly comes together. It all makes sense. It's more relevant in a sense. It's a wholeness, rather than that separation, like I talked about, that duality of the subject and the object being the person, the subject being the perceiver or the watcher of the mind and life of the person. But I'm going to go back to the basics now and just talk about the techniques and the practice that might be relevant for helping anyone who is listening. So there are different methods that I think work differently for different people. So I'll describe my own experience and then go from there. So initially it was an effort to silence the mind. Silencing the mind was an effort. It wasn't like, so I would use my visual field. I would be walking, I'd be aware of my environment. I would be walking and I'd just be observing without mental narrative for as long as I could, until the mental narrative kicked in, and then I would remember. And then so it was very easy when I was walking out and about. It was very easy for me to move into a state of thoughtlessness. practice, repetition, remembering. You start to notice that. So it was easier for me. It got to a point where I was walking. See, my walk is like 20 minutes. I would get to the point where I was maintaining a state of no mind throughout that entire walk because I was completely present, completely aware of my surroundings. I then started to notice different forms of thought in the background once that initial mental dialogue had silenced. So there'd be more subtle forms of thought that didn't come in the form of mental dialogue that were there. They were definitely operating through habit in the background. Anyway, we'll not go there just now. Moving into interacting with people, say in triggering situations where it would be easy to slip into unconsciousness again, to slip into defensiveness or full identification with the ego. For me, it worked well to watch the situation, to watch this person operating in the situation, almost from a third person point of view, rather than being lost in the thing. So what happens is you start to remember, notice, realise when you're lost in thought, and then you, like that, and you're, okay, I'm lost in thought. Bring my awareness back to some object of mindfulness or meditation. The breath is always there, easy, something to look at. Proprioception, the feeling in your body somewhere. Breath is good. And then bring it back. It's like you're waking up. You know, I noticed when I was out on my walk, I would get lost in thought before I knew it. It would come through the back door, and then when I noticed, brought it back, the world lit up, everything lit up, because the senses were dimmed, the attention was taken by this thought entity that had basically come along and then directed my attention towards something that is unreal, some thought form, some thought process that's unreal. So directing the attention back, the longer you do that, you start to notice that parts of time when you're doing this become effortless, and then you'll start to have experiences of pure presence. These experiences last for a bit, and then again the habit comes. It's just being aware, practicing this. You're working on not doing nothing. You're working to do nothing. You're working to do nothing by unlearning the doing that you have accumulated through practice and through the mind running you for this such a long time. So eventually it becomes the habit, or the presence outweighs the tendency or the pull of the mind towards full identification, and the effort starts to drop away at times in your life. So it's not, you're not contracting your mind to silence it, you're not applying effort to silence the mind, you're not trying to have no thought. Again, it's like the gap closes. That's kind of where it feels like the circuit closes, and the effortless comes in, and the presence just is present itself. It's not I am doing presence, I'm being present. The presence is just there. The circuit is closed, and you get this kind of energetic shift where things just click, and that's the initial stage of awakening. And it can be very subtle. It can build up over time because the person's getting used to it. You're getting used to dismantling the person, and then you notice yourself in presence, and then the mind applies itself in retrospect to think, what's going on here, and you realise that you have identified with something else. It might be even be in retrospect through the mind that you get to this this kind of eureka moment of realisation where I have been operating, the self has been operating almost on its own, but you have been watching from this state, this higher, let's say higher self for the time being, and that's it. And it can be very subtle. It can be very subtle, and you'll have some experiences along the way that are very blissful, very transcendental, very profound. And because you are exiting the mind identification, the full identification with the ego, which is a very like tight, contracted box type experience. When the relief, the bliss people call it, that is experienced is profound, and then that starts to become the normal state. After the awakening, what happened for me at least anyway, and I've heard a lot of other people say this, is that the well practiced self continues to operate as it has operated before, automatically, and then through attention, through just practice of life, it begins to change. And then you have a new perspective of clarity because you're not lost in it. I like to describe it like this: you're reading the book with your face in the book, and you're reading each word through a straw like that, and eventually you get rid of the straw and you're like, oh, that's a whole page, and then you go like this, and you're looking at the book, and it's just a story, if that kind of makes sense. And the immediate clarity over things and situations, how the self operates, you can see all of it, you can observe all of it, you can see all of it, you're not lost in it. So for the first time ever, although the self is automated, it happens automatically, there's a sense of control by letting go, a paradoxical kind of, I'm going to let go, and then that gives me some form of handle on what's going on, in a sense. It's not a very great way to describe it. Practice, and then you can start practicing life and observing behaviours, observing things about yourself that you weren't previously aware of and weren't capable of seeing, therefore weren't capable of changing. So you begin to see other people in a different way. You begin to notice yourself and other people. I mean that in two ways. Yourself is in infinite consciousness, but yourself also is in the operation of the ego, the unconscious reactions of the ego. That is just like a programmed reactions, and then you see it in other people, and then you see how you react to this in other people, and you're like, it's just it's almost automatic. This isn't me. I'm not in this. I can see it, and then it starts to change, if that makes sense. So someone said they liked examples. So you start noticing yourself behaving in different ways than you usually would, but initially you see the remnants of this well-practiced ego reaction that kind of come and go, and then dissipate, and then they'll come back and come and dissipate, and so on, and then the power of them just starts to release over time. So examples that I used to be an angry driver, so when someone pulled out in front of me, beep the horn, someone beeps at you and you're like, what the fuck are you beeping, and all that kind of stuff. How dare you beep at me, and this shit. Yeah, there's none of that now. So you even see, like, for example, I'll give you an example. So the other day, going around the roundabout, some guy pulled out. Maybe I was going a bit fast, I don't know. I pulled out, and he slammed on the brakes, and I stopped in the middle of the roundabout. So I just waited for him. I could see him going swearing and all that kind of stuff through the through the window, and he drove away off, and speeded away off, and then I could see him reacting in an angry way to his mistake because he thought I was going to be angry at him, so he was becoming defensive. I just it's like you're not involved. The whole thing plays out, and you don't. I would have done that kind of thing as well. Um, an example from yesterday. So I went into a shop. I had my hood up, and as I went in, it was cold. As I went in, the security guard came up and said, "Take your hood down, mate." And I was like, "Okay, hood down, all right." Why is that important? It seems like nothing, and it is nothing. But before, I would have been like, "Who the fuck are you telling?" I wouldn't. Maybe I wouldn't have said this. So this would go on, like this insanity in my mind, saying, "Who the fuck are you telling me to put my hood down? I can put my hood up if I want." Blah 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 blah. Why don't you have my head down? Blah, blah, blah. It's like the dialogue of a child, of a teenager, and a fully grown adult. But now, yeah, fine, hood down, not a problem. Just there's no problem there, no problem there at all. But I can even see, um, the ego is a program. It's not. Um, it's like the ego almost doesn't even exist. Um, when you're not in it, it's almost, it's like you can't even see the egos in other people. You can observe the behavior, but it's not this entity. It's not this thing. This ego reacting this ego. It's all just a thing that's playing out, and it's all just a dance of form. It's all just a program reactions, things reacting to other things, and so on. That's how it's seen when you're not in it. But at the same time, you are in it, and again, there's another paradox. So yeah, practical tips for the initial realization. It leads in these radically positive changes in behavior. Practice, practice, practice. Notice, and it requires effort in the beginning. And the effort to remember when you're in thought. Experiment with different techniques, different ways of channeling your awareness. So what worked for me was the expanding my awareness, so not focusing on thought. When the thought goes when I look at something with acute awareness, experience my body, my breath, how everything feels, and expand my awareness of myself out into everything that's around me. Observe, include, be aware. And so different things work for different people. Sound is a good one for people listening to sounds, trying to hear the furthest away sound possible. Say when you're walking down the street or sitting here. What can I hear? How far can I hear? But not mental dialogue, just listen. What can I see? What can I see that I have not seen before on my usual walk to work? What can I see? So something that I didn't notice. And then when you're looking, that minute when you're looking, presence. What will be the next thought that comes up? Wait for the next thought. What do you think it's going to be? Let's look. And as soon as a thought comes up, another good one to do is when you know, this is one that I did at the beginning, when you notice yourself mental dialoguing, say the last, so you've got like a sentence. So me, it wouldn't be all sentences and words, it might be images and stuff, but you got a sentence. The last word, scream that in your head as loud as you can. Scream it, so you can almost try and hear it, try and hear if it's real. Scream it, and then stop. And then again, when the next one comes up, scream it in your head, scream. And then you start to, if you imagine yourself walking down the street, just do it like if you did it out loud. pure insanity. It would be insane, wouldn't it? But yeah, do that, scream it, and then it stops. As soon as you notice, scream that last word in your head. I mean, you can do it out loud if you want, but it's probably not recommendable. Yes, that's a good one. Watch the watcher. Who is watching? See if you can be aware of awareness. See, when you're sitting, move into the body. Go around the body scanning. Observe all the sensations with as much acute awareness as you can. Breath. Be aware of your breathing. Look up some breathing techniques. There's one called, I think it's pranayama, breathing, probably butchering that name. It's a kind of yoga breathing technique. See if you can work on your breathing, see if you can get your lungs working a bit better. Practice that. Make yourself fitter. Exercise, get yourself in the zone, focus, be aware of what you're doing, learn a new skill, so you have to focus on it. Take up a new sport or something like that. So, but just practice, and everyone's going to be a little bit different in the way they respond to certain things. So, once it becomes a habit, then the gaps start to close and it all falls into place. But it's a difficult thing, letting go of those thoughts, because it's so well practiced. It's almost like you're not even in control of it, but you're bypassing that by shifting your awareness to a third party almost that's just watching. I find it helpful to use the is it Vedanta? Anyway, the kind of true self, your true self. Who are you? Who are you before you were born? Who are you after you die? What is your true self? Because it's right here, right now. And you are it. You just got to notice that. It's not through the mind, not through theory or philosophy. It's just through experiencing, being open, questioning, who am I? What am I? Because if you're watching this video, you know that the awakening process has already begun. There's that pull to this, pulling you towards it, because you know that, you know, this ego, this self is not you, not really, from one point of view. And that, I think we know that, but it's just almost like proving that to ourselves through practice. It does require some concentration. Interesting, anyway, so I'll finish this video soon. I decided to bring up to my wife, I decided to bring up the topic of awakening, enlightenment and so on, and just to see, and she's intelligent, open-minded, and I was explaining it, and she's like, yes, I get the concepts, and I was doing the really annoying thing of pointing out that anything of the mind, but what if that, but what about this enlightened person, anything of the mind is a thought, that's not it, that's not what we're talking about. And she's like, yes, I get that, but, and then I pointed out again, and she said, yeah, I totally understand that, and explained it back to me, and I know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do this anyway, because, so, she knows, she has that, there's a knowing there, there's an awareness that there's something beyond the person and the story of the person, but she's consciously deciding. She even said to me, like, or the whatever, said that, but I'm going to do this because I'm not, I don't want to, at this point in time, I don't want to wake up, or I'm not interested in that, so I'm just going to go in. So there's that awareness, that knowing's already there. It's inherent, and we are all already enlightened. We are already awake. It's just a case of seeing through the person. The journey is the journey of the person. The spiritual path is, and all the complexities and intricacies around the theory of this path to awakening is all the person. It's all the person, and that person's journey through, and then the journey gets to a certain point, and then both ends close, and then it's just there's not a journey anymore. So so this is what happens when I'm not restricted by time. I end up talking for like over half an hour. Anyway, that's all for now. By the way, I'm not convinced anyone actually watches these videos, but I've seen some people were commenting, so if there are any comments or questions or ideas or advice or whatever, then just pop it in the comments. Okay, that'll do.